is a presentation on the new features within Alphacam 2017 R1. This presentation will look at the changes that we've made to the graphical user interface. We've continued to add to the new machining dialogues. So when we now look at the machining strategy for drive curves, we will see it have a new dialog where we get the options to pick the drive curves from it, and the system shows whether these are actually being selected or not. If they haven't been selected, then you won't be able to continue until they are. Cylindrical parallel also has been given a new dialog box. And now we get an extents visualization. So when you've entered in the angles that you want to start and finish at, this is shown by a shaded area of the tool color around the part. Cylindrical profiling has also been updated. And cut spline polyline also has a new dialog. We've also now started to change the dialogues in the stone product. So cut with the disc has also been updated, where we also get to actually see the geometry profile that's being cut, and you no longer have to put the geometry profile in a work plane perpendicular to the geometry that you're cutting. It can now be in any plane or taken from a profile library. So we get the on-screen feedback of seeing this, and we also get the possibilities of having a profile library. There are some default profiles that have been installed with the system. Manual toolpath in stone also has an update to the dialog, and so does the polishing cycle. We've also changed the configure dialog. It was tabs before, and we've now changed to what we call the navigation bar, with this area down the left hand side. We find this looks a lot less cluttered, so it's easier to find the settings that we require. There is now workplane properties dialog, and this can be accessed via a button on the tab or a button on the workplanes tab of the project manager. And this allows you to set the names of the properties of the workplane, the offset numbers, and also when you click in this dialog it will activate the relevant workplane. User layers has also been updated. We now get the options to set some default settings. And obviously once these are done, the next time you create a layer, then it will come up with these properties by default. So let's have a look at these settings now within Alphacam 2017 R1. Let's start by looking at the drive curve strategy. So I'm going to begin by selecting a tool. Then we go to the 3D machining option. So we can see the old options of 3D surface machining and 3D solid machining. These have now been combined into one 3D machining engine where you can select surfaces or solids accordingly. We pick 3-axis and drive curve strategy. Say OK to this. Here we can see the standard dialog with the standard 3D machining features in it. We now have the option here to pick the drive curves. We see the red cross indicates that the drive curve hasn't yet been selected. Therefore, if I try and click OK, the system is prompting me to go and pick the drive curves. So I'm going to use geometries, pick drive curves, go and select my geometries, finish, and then I'm going to enter in my Z levels accordingly. And let's say OK to that. Now we need to select the face that we're machining. In this case it's at surface, finish, and then we can see that the toolpath is projected down in the drive curve strategy. Now we're going to look at the cylindrical parallel strategy. So let's begin by selecting a tool, and then to 3D machining engine. So we can see here we have 3-axis, and the GIF is indicating a 3-axis toolpath. We need the tool now to rotate between the Z and the Y axes in 4-axis. So if we go pick the 4-axis YZ rotation, we can now see the image changes to indicate the strategy that we're going to get. We're going to go for cylindrical parallel, and then I'm going to say OK. So the first thing we have to do is pick a line of axis of revolution. It's going to be straight down the centre of the part. This is the axis that the tool will rotate around. We now pick the solid that we're going to look at, and we can now see the extents visualization. So we have our Z levels and things. I'm happy with that. lead in, lead out. I'm not going to change anything there. But now when we come to machining data, we can see we have our width of cut. We have our start angle and end angle. If I now change these, we can now see when I click off this dialog that the extents dynamically modify themselves to indicate the area that we're going to be machining. So if I want to machine 180 degrees across the top of the part, my start angle will be at -90 and my end angle will be at 90. So this shows the area where we're going to be machining. The Z levels of the extents obviously also show this. So if we change this from auto, they will now be specified levels. So if I look, I have control over these values that can restrict my machining accordingly to the areas that I just want it to machine. So this is what the extents visualization can give us. If we look at another example of the extents visualization, we can see where it's going to be really helpful. So we have a toolpath going all the way around this feature, which we obviously can see is not possible. If we edit this operation and then go to the machining data tab, we can see where we get to control the extents of the toolpath. We can see we have our start angle and end angle aren't feasible on a part like this. So let's just put in some arbitrary values for the moment and see the area that this is going to cover. We can quickly see that just by changing these values now, we're going to be a lot clearer of the part, certainly rotationally. We also have to consider that we are colliding with the shoulders here, so we can now change these cut between values just to give us a little bit more clearance with the actual tool holder. And these update and see that we're now a little bit clearer, and that gives us an indication as well that we can also now rotate the tool further around the job, so we can increase these start angles and end angles. So if I modify these, we get a better idea of what we can truly achieve. And the amount of clearances that we'll get. So this goes to show the power of the extents visualization. Now let's look at the cylindrical profiling new dialogues. Start by selecting a tool. So let's pick the 20mm ball, and we go to the 3D machining options. We're going to change this from 3-axis to 4-axis YZ rotations. We're rotating over the X-axis, and pick the cylindrical profiling strategy. So we get a GIF giving the indication of the type of toolpath this is going to generate. Say OK, and we obviously have our values to set. I'm not going to leave any stock on this, so I just need to set my Z levels. And lead in, lead out links, I'm not going to change anything here. The same as tool data has already come off the tool, so it's the machining data that's the particular tab I want to look at. Here we can set our cusp height or width of cut, methods of cutting, quality of cut, direction of cut. But the main criteria here is the cut between values. We can't cut along the whole length of here, otherwise we're going to go into the chuck jaws. So I'm going to restrict the machining back to around this area. So I'm going to deselect auto, I'm going to start at the 0 point in X, and I'm going to end, I'm not sure whereabouts I'm going to end, so I'm going to click a pick point from the drawing, and I'm going to say the center of this point here, which will return the X-axis position for me. Once I'm happy with these values, I can say OK, and it now picks a point of the axis that we're rotating around. Well, that pick point is going to be in YZ0, so I can accept that. And then I'm going to pick what I want to machine. Click finish, and then I'm going to pick a start point. I'm going to start at the 0 point in X, so I can return 0, 0, 0, and then let the toolpath start to generate. So that's created the toolpath for me, and I can see how it's restricted it to the level that I've requested. Now we're going to look at the updates we've made to the machining dialogues for cut spline or polyline. We'll begin by selecting a tool again, and we'll pick the 6mm flat and go to cut spline polyline. So the new GUI just a different layout now, and obviously asking for the relevant information, so we'll set that accordingly. And when we're happy with that, and we're happy with the tool data, we click OK. We're now prompted to select the polyline that we want to cut, so I'll pick that and then finish, and then we have a little bit more information. So we now introduced a tangency tolerance. This is now when approaching sharp corners, it defines the quality of how well it goes around these corners. So 5 is a default value that on the previous version of Alphacam was the setting of how it created the toolpath. If you find that doesn't quite give you the quality of toolpath that you want, you can adjust this value. So I'm going to be parallel to, and I'm going to be parallel to solid model faces, and if I want to check which direction around this is going, I can show the ghost tools to see the direction of cut, and we can see that we're coming in this direction, so I want to be cutting to the right side of that line. So we can set right. We can also set our lead in, lead out. I can come and look at the library of pre-saved files I have, so I'm going to go for the trim lead. When I'm happy with the values, I can say OK. We now need to pick the solid model faces that we want to be parallel to. So I'm going to select this one face, and then using the face selector I'm going to pick the same colour faces. When I'm happy with that, I can click finish and let the toolpath generate. There are no more polylines to cut with this information, so I can now just say finish, and we see we have our toolpath going around the part. Now we're going to look at the work plane properties feature that we've introduced. So let's start by going to solid model extract and just creating some work planes via the extraction. So I'm going to look at drillable holes, and I'm going to go create automatically, which will create all of the drillable hole work planes for me. So let's say OK. We can see that we have 4 work planes created. Now we can now see here on the project manager we have the work plane properties. If I go to the work planes tab, we can also say we have work plane properties here. If I activate this command, it brings up the dialog of the current name and the offset number for each plane. If I actually click into this dialog, it activates the plane for me. That makes it obvious which plane this is, so I can now name it accordingly and set a offset number if required. I can continue to work my way through all of the planes now and set the names and values. What I had to do on the last one was I actually had to go to each plane here in the project manager, right click on it and set the properties. So it's a much faster method of working through and naming your work planes, and certainly the relevant ones to you. So once that's done, I can just close the dialog, and we can see all of the work planes on the project manager have been updated dynamically for me. I mentioned at the start of the presentation that we'd also updated some of the stone dialogues as well. Well, these will be shown in the release video for the machining options, so we will see these later.